there are teachers, as we saw in the data, millions of data points, teachers are struggling with those cognitively complex skills, again, talking at a national level. So we will be at the beginning level on some strategies, and that's okay. We expect to be here on things that are new techniques that are new to us. At the developing level, uses the progression of standards-based learning targets embedded within a performance scale to identify accurate critical content, but less than the majority of students are displaying the desired effect at the right taxonomic level. So when we move from developing to applying, now we're seeing more students demonstrating the desired effect, right, at the correct taxonomic level. So all of the elements that need to be embedded in a really robust instructional framework, observation framework are included in this model within the context of growth over time. Should I go over another one, or should I just move past this, or is that sufficient? Anybody have any questions to this point before I move on further?
You had a slide that had like
Oh.
about 6 different practices, maybe not like different classes.
Okay. Yes.
I don't see that.
It's not. You know what? When I was waiting in the lobby, I added it because I was thinking through the different type. I can send it. I'll send a new updated copy. You are very observant, and you're absolutely correct. That is the only slide I added at the last minute. I call it that presenter's, I don't know, whatever it is. I'm allowed to do that.
Okay, now were those like, can you go back to it? Like going back to it?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're the Marzano Nine, and they're the strategies. There are 9 of them that have been shown to be the most effective strategies, that if we use them regularly and with fidelity, the way that they're actually supposed to be used, that you'll get those results, those percentage increases for students. They are part of what Ms. Carr is talking about inside that framework that she just showed you, the expected teacher behaviors, and then what the student should be doing as part of the evidence that I look at whenever I go into a classroom. Those are part of all part of that.
And are these the most effective strategies for students in an urban core, like?
Absolutely.
Oh, they are.
Yeah,
Or,
absolutely.
but so would it be different for students overall, or do you?
No, this is really
It's a framework.
this is really this is a framework that is very universal. How teachers apply it, you know, the content, if you will, but really and truly, this is so universal. And we do this work in all kinds of urban settings across the country.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what she said. And also, if you were to Google Marzano's Nine, it pulls right up, right on top in the meantime.
Hi, Joe, are you finished? So I'm kind of a little confused. So is this a product that we purchase, a package that we buy, and then how does it get into the schools and into the classrooms and actually having the teachers use it? And the reason for my question is because we've purchased a lot of things. And then it does not get into each classroom. Sometimes it doesn't get into the schools. And I'm talking about the past. I'm not talking about the current administration. So I'm just kind of trying to get a feel of what this is on that level. You know, I mean, I understand the information that you're providing here, but can you talk a little bit to me about how do we take this and put it into our first grade, second grade, third grade? Tell me where that's going to go.
I'll answer that question,
Okay,
if that's
that's
okay.
fine,
And then Beth can talk about how other schools do it as well. The instructional design team that studied all kinds of instructional designs last year, instructional frameworks last year, they're the ones it was a group of teachers and administrators who came up with choosing the Marzano model. And what we then did after we chose that model was we went through, and on this particular chart, we divided up a 3-year staff development process that every person, the principals, the teachers, everyone would go through, so we had the common language of what this is about. And the principals have already started this process. The teacher leaders will be there tomorrow for their processing piece of that, as well as additional principal training that's occurring tomorrow with this organization that's doing the training for us. But what we decided to do was to take 3 years, do it very thoroughly, and train on each of these categories. So the teacher leaders and the curriculum team will develop the teacher-based presentations. Learning Sciences, we've contracted with them to do the principal teacher leader-based trainings, and then we're taking that into the classroom level, because at the elementary level, which is our largest group of teachers, we have time set aside each day called a data chat. So once a week, my team will come with me to the teacher leaders. So we're first grade teachers. So Randall and I go to our data chat for that day. There is a presentation that the teacher leader will do that the curriculum team and the teacher leaders all together have put together to introduce, for example, identifying critical content from the standards. So when we introduce that to them and we teach that to them, then in the next couple of weeks we'll go into the classroom as teacher leaders and we'll reinforce that instruction and make sure they understand how it's supposed to be implemented. That's why we're taking 3 years to do this, to make sure it's done well, it's done correctly, and we start to do it with fidelity. Then, in part of that training, these pages that Beth just went over, the rubrics where she showed you the protocols, those are things that we will train in, so people will know this is what the teacher, these are the strategies that the teacher can be using for this particular element on the chart. These are the things that your kids should be doing in response to that instruction, and this is the evidence. This is the evidence, so that when I come in to do the eye observation software piece, which is what she was talking about, as well as my walkthrough document, I have all those pieces right there in front of me on my computer screen, and the teachers have been trained in it. We mark it and we say, okay, to improve this, you might want to do this, or you're doing this great, can you share it with a colleague, that sort of thing. So it's we've structured it with the instructional design team to be a 3-year process and to do it very methodically and very carefully, and the teacher leader position is the position that will help us make or break this by their constant reinforcement of it.
Okay. And then, thank you. And then on the, so it appears, I'm getting the impression that there's the teacher evaluation tool is a part of this.
This is just a walkthrough document. We currently use a walkthrough document called Easy Walkthrough. So instead of using Easy Walkthrough, we're going to use this as the walkthrough document, so it matches what I'm supposed to be doing in my classroom.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So this program then will be the basis to help, well, the basis for teachers to teach, but also for administrators, supervisors to monitor whether or not the type of teaching we want to see happen in Dayton Public Schools is actually being followed.
Yes.
So it's like a whole package deal, not just piecemeal here and there.
It's from the very beginning of what I should be doing in my classroom, what my students should be doing, and how I monitor that and watch that, and how I grow and develop my teachers into that teacher leader side that was up there on the wall when she just talked about.
This provides material for teaching. It trains the teacher, or gives, and then it also trains the principal, the evaluators on how to evaluate. Now, is this taken into the subjects of like art, music? So it's across the board.
It's across the board. It's a best
Okay.
practices. It's an instructional design. And basically, even though as an art teacher, I'll use during art history class, art appreciation class, music appreciation class, I'll use note-taking as a strategy, but I'm going to do more non-linguistic kind of representations in those kinds of classes, but I can also be expected to do certain types of homework, or I can be expected to do a couple of the other Marzano 9 graphic organizers, things that were listed on that Marzano 9. I can be expected to do those in my classroom. But in addition to the Marzano 9, there are other best practices built into this model. The resources that teachers use to teach are the resources that the district has already adopted. So I can take the new science book, I put it into that instructional design framework, and I know that I need to chunk information in this manner. I need to pick that critical information and make sure that I'm teaching what is actually critical to the student to learn this. And that's what this teaches us, is I'm looking at the standard, and the standard has got a lot of blah, 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 blah in it. And I know that's not a pretty word for the press to hear, the blah, blah, blah. But, for example, I deconstruct that standard to the point that I get to the chunk of information that's most important for my students to know, and I spend my time on that. And I teach them that. I watch to see if they get it. If they don't get it, then I come back and I teach it again a different way. So
Thank you. You may use blah, 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 but
Okay,
you
all
you are always very thorough, and you've thought this way through, talking about the materials that we've already purchased. So it sounds like it's just all falling right into the flow. And so and thank you for your presentation and for answering my questions. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Dr. Baguirov?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question. If 70% of schools have improved their letter grades, what about the other 30%?
Yeah, it was out of 10 schools in that example, 77 of them moved at least one letter grade, 3 of them moved 2 letter grades. The other 3 schools, and that's a really good question, it really was leadership. The 3 school leaders in those 3 schools didn't believe that their students could do the work, didn't believe their teachers could do the work. And it was until January, we started at the beginning of school, it was January when they realized, because the other 7 were what we call popping. They had all switched over to this way of teaching, and not switched over, but they had embraced that extra step. These are strategies that teachers use every day in their classrooms right now. These are not new. It's the strategies and techniques they use right now. It's the level to which they're using them and the level to which they're transferring ownership to students. And sometimes what we have to do is really go to the students, and the students start to evolve and change. And then the adults start to evolve and change. So those 3 principles, solid in January in their colleagues, in the other schools, but they didn't have enough time to change to grow a letter grade. They did the next year, which was great, and we continue to work with those schools and grow them into an A status.
And if the principals were the bottleneck in that
Yes.
particular school district, what about whoever oversees those principals? So chief academic officer, whatever,
Sure.
deputy superintendent. Shouldn't they be then brought into the training early on so that they can drill this and make
There is
sure that
value.
this is followed by all the principals? I mean, what was the lessons learned as a result of this? And, how is DPS therefore going to benefit from this experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. Much of the work that we do with instructional leadership teams at the school level is as a result of some of that learning. We really have grown in understanding that, and there's a little bit of a balance with this, just to be very candid with you. You can't force adults to do something that they're not going to do. But when you start to show them evidence, and some adults are more willing to be learners side by side, and so we have ways now, literally, that we help them to see the progress that's being made in smaller chunks and shorter cycles. So like in a 30-day cycle, you can see major progress because we have a new technique now that we use to. So yes, we've absolutely learned from those experiences.
And one last question is, which other school districts in Ohio have implemented this model?
I can give you a list. Findlay City, Great Oaks, there's a long list, actually.
Okay.
There's a list of districts. I would have to email it to
Great.
you, and I apologize for not being able to think of it off the top of my
Thank
head.
you.
You're welcome.
Board Member Lee?
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Ms. Carr,
I guess the question comes to me in following Dr. Bagirov's question. Is there a process before we begin, if we do the Marzano teaching method, to have an evaluation of all of our principals and leaders as to how they perceive the program, how they think that they will fit into it, and being able to define which leaders will be the most effective? I guess what I'm trying to say, is there a way to work the process before we start Marzano to have heads up of where the difficulties may lie? I'm key on leadership, and I began to realize a long time ago, you can have all of the degrees and certification in the world, but that does not denote that you are an effective leader. Sure. And that's what has to happen in all of our buildings for this program, as well as any program, is all of our leaders buying in 100%. If you don't do that, then you're going to get what you get.
Right.
And that's what you already have.
Well, one of the things, it's a great question. One of the things, we take a slightly different approach. We want all principals. We have a plan that works to move all school leaders forward. So the training being over multiple years has a very systematic approach to it. We provide training. School leaders go into their classrooms and practice what they've learned using the eye observation tool. We collect that data. We have very specific data. I'm going to show you some sample reports out of eye observation, and I'll show you the level of granularity of reports that you will be able to track, and track, not as a gotcha, but track school leaders and their understanding and their willingness to do the work, which I think is your point.
That's my point.
And so we will then, again, systematically circle back to them. We'll bring peers in. We'll do, we could provide some coaching for those principals as well. So that we, over time, so as an example, in one of the schools, much of how we work, when we do, separate from an implementation of an instructional framework, we do very intensive turnaround projects in schools. When you move an F school to a D school in a year, that's an intensive project. I think we can all agree on that. We have a process that enlists, we could take volunteer teachers, we call them the Coalition of the Willing. So we start with a Coalition of the Willing, right? School leaders, the whole school leadership team, teachers, and systematically over time, we have a plan for enlisting everyone willingly and not by force. And it really works, actually. Did that answer your question?
That's
sir?
helpful. That's very,
Okay.
very helpful.
So let me go through some of this a little bit further, just to reinforce what Dr. Lally was sharing. The content within the model walks the teacher and the school leader through those instructional processes and the adaptations that happen during that lesson. So not only the teacher techniques, but the monitoring techniques to ensure that all students have arrived at the appropriate level, at the appropriate taxonomic level, and that there's evidence of the desired effect, and then the adaptations that might need to come. So it's all built into each of those elements. So the piece that I wanted to get to, I'm going to skip through some of this because we've looked at much of this already, is in eye observation. And this is in your PowerPoint if we need an enlarged slide. There are, not only is all of the data collected in eye observation reportable, it's one of the most robust, mature, scalable, configurable evaluation systems in the country today. And we say that with great confidence. We've never found an evaluation system or observation tool in the country that we weren't able to manage effectively. So this shows us that, the number, and that's actually hard to read up there. It didn't look so bad on my laptop. The projector has really made that blurry. So this shows us that a school building, right, the number of observations, the score, the number of scores, and then the average score, whatever that average score is. It tells us the types of observations and how many. This will be a pie chart. You'll have multiple different types of observations. You can look at schools side by side. So there's a school highlighted in blue. Okay. We have a school highlighted in blue, but there are other schools here. So you'll have a list of your schools. You'll be able to sort them by category. You can see the number of observations. You can drill down and look at the distribution on that scale that we were looking at as a whole district, and then as by individual building. So you can look at a side-by-side comparison. You can drill down to the observer level as well and look at observations, the distribution of observations. This again is a different lens looking at the types of observations. So again, these are dynamic reports that live in a dashboard. So everyone involved in the process, the school leader has it for their school, central office has it for the whole district. Candidly, teachers have access to their own data in their own data dashboard. And again, this shows you the distribution of multiple layers across the district, the whole district, the school building, and then an individual observer. This shows the elements that are scored. This will give you a short list of the dominant strategies that are teachers are receiving feedback on, and what the average score is on that. And then a month-by-month perspective of the data collected over time. And then this is I think this is just the percentages of developing and applying. So this is the percentages of the scale, how many, in each scale level, how many scores at each scale level. So these, again, this is a very short synopsis of the data available. Observation, again, is any data that you put in can be reported upon. These are just some of the summaries in the dashboard. So those are the slides that I have prepared. Again, if you go to Marzano, if you go to learningsciences.com or marzanoscenter.com, lots of research papers if you need something to read or would like some additional information. And there's lots of other resources. So is that? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, before we end, Vice President Dr. Roundtree had a question that we wanted to make sure that she answered. Sure.